Are you ready? I'm KyleMackie, and welcome to the podcast. So to start this show off today, I just want to thank you to all those people who are tuning in for this very first episode of the podcast. For those of you who know me, I've been talking about this for multiple years, getting a podcast back up and running. This has been a dream of mine to put a show out that helps people on a weekly or regular basis, to give people the tools that they need to live a better, a more fulfilling, a more content life. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a Canadian. I'm living in New Zealand. And one of my favorite things that I've done over the years is actually public speaking and being on stage. If you bring me back to my years in high school, I can still remember vividly when I would have public speakers come into the school, like Andy Thibodeau. I also went to a Tony Robbins Foundation presentation conference at the World Leadership Congress in Washington, D.C. And these opportunities that I had, when I got to listen to these people who have lived a more full and were further on in their life than I definitely was, given that I was still back in high school. It was such an empowering opportunity to hear their stories that they had to share. See, when I got to listen to all these different stories that they were telling me, I didn't pick up every single message along the way, but I was able to pick up little things here and there, which would actually change and shape my future. And so when I got a little bit older, I had this dream that I would speak on stage. And I would be able to share stories that would have a positive impact, specifically at that time with youth. So back in 2023, I actually created a company called Mr. PMA. Now, Mr. PMA actually goes back a little bit further. When I was back in high school, I was part of this youth leadership organization called HOBY. And HOBY was essentially that. It was a youth leadership program that was run both locally and internationally. Locally, we would have clues, which were like very local, like just for our city. And then there was province-wide, given that I was in Canada, provinces. And then we had WLC, which was the World Leadership Congress. Now, at the local level, the clues, that's how I sort of got into this. I actually didn't get selected to go to the province-wide conference. I got sort of pushed out of that due to some conflict of interest in the selection process. But I didn't go to that, but eventually I went to the clue. And I really came into my own there. I really had a lot of energy, full of excitement. We did a lot of these cheers and stuff. And so the following year, I actually got selected to become Mr. PMA. And for the provincial conference, I was the one who essentially kept everybody hyped, kept everybody energized. And there was this amazing feeling being on stage and being the reason why everybody there was full of excitement 24/7. And so this motivated me after a year of travel that I did in 2013. I was 23 at the time, to start my own motivational speaking company, Mr. PMA. It was a great experience. I had lots of great speaking opportunities, and I spoke on the power of positive mental attitude with youth. The biggest conference I had was for a province-wide conference for all the student government prime ministers and student trustees across the Ontario region. It was so fulfilling. Unfortunately, I didn't know how to run a business back then. That was my second business. The first one did all right. That one, not so much. I went about $54,000 in debt in about 10 months because I was spending money without really thinking about how I was going to make it. So although I had all these great speaking opportunities, I never really got to turn it into a career just because I didn't have a way to monetize it. But you'll notice a trend throughout my life. All I've always wanted to do is help people. So I started off with this public speaking, which was great. I wanted to help youth because I knew the power of just living a more positive life. I think when you're positive, it adds such value to everything you do, and it allows you to accomplish all these things that you're trying to do. I worked in fitness for a good portion of my life as well. So I actually started teaching fitness classes at 15 at my local gym, and it sort of all just continued on from there. I worked in the fitness industry for about 14 years with things dabbled in between. In 2018, I finished my life coaching course. And so I started a podcast, the Happy Millennial Podcast, and tried to get into life coaching. Again, I was trying to help people with this. And along the way, I've done a lot of working with charities. I've done a lot of fundraising. I've raised millions of dollars over the years to allow charities to be able to do all the incredible work that they do. But I've always wanted to help people. That's always been the goal. It doesn't matter what I've done in life. It all comes back to wanting to help people live a better life. And so this podcast right here, it's essentially that. I want to help people. I also want to have the opportunity to learn and grow. And so I can combine all that together. This podcast can be the opportunity for me to learn and grow on a daily and weekly basis while helping others gain the tools which will help them on their journeys as well. So what is it about this podcast? Originally, I actually wanted to call this podcast The Journey. Unfortunately, the whole concept of getting a title for your podcast, it's a lot harder said than done because it seems like every single podcast title has already been stolen. Not stolen, they took it first. I'd be stealing it if I took it from them. So The Journey was not an option. And then I thought about finding direction because again, I feel like a lot of people in their 20s, their 30s, sometimes even in their 40s, they're quite lost in life and where they want to go. And ultimately, I want to be able to help people find their direction. And it brings me back to this story. So in my hand right here, I have this compass. Back in 2023, I went on a 11-month trip. And I remember in India, I can't remember the exact location, but I met this one woman from Portugal. She was quite a bit older than me. I think she was in her 30s. I would have been in my early 20s. And she gave me this compass here. And it was something that she always traveled with. But the real message behind it was, travel is, it's a journey that we go on. And it's an opportunity to find a direction in which we want to go. And so she gave me this gift and she's like, I've taken this everywhere I've traveled. And it's been the thing to remind me to enjoy this journey and to look for the direction of what comes with it. And it's the one thing that I've held on to from all those years. I'm living in New Zealand and I moved to Australia with this and I moved to here with this. And although I don't even know if the compass actually works, I like to view it as what I'm trying to do. And that's help both myself and other people find direction as they enjoy their journey. Now, I know there's millions of podcasts out there. And I know on all these podcasts you learn and you grow and you get all these extra bits and pieces. And I know this podcast is just another one of those. But the difference between this podcast and potentially those podcasts is the delivery itself. You can hear the same message 100 times. And it's not until that 100th time where that tool, that message, that little tidbit of information actually hits home. And so you may have heard a lot of the stuff that I talk about. Because again, a lot of the things that I talk about, I'm going to get from books, from past experiences, conferences that I've gone to. At some point, I hope I have guests and we can have these conversations where we can learn directly from them. But Again, you may have heard all this stuff before, but it might be the way that I articulate it from my mouth that allows you to hear it in a way where it actually hits home from you, and could be the snowball that, turns into an avalanche and makes that change happen. So hopefully from this podcast, you will gain tools which will change your life. And it would be an honor if I can be the one that helps you on your journey. So my goal for this podcast is to give everyone that listens at least one, but ideally 3 new tools or concepts that they can apply or implement in their lives each and every time you listen. But given that today is the first episode, it means that today should be the day that we start. This isn't just an introduction. So there's no excuse for delivering on that goal today as well. We're going to deliver not just 3, but 4 things that I think are important in your life to make it both happy, content, fulfilling. And I think if you can have these 4 things, your life will be so much better. If you check back to the podcast that I created back in 2018, 2019 with the Happy Millennial Podcast, you'll notice I talked about 3 of these things a lot. And even all these years later, I still think those 3 things are incredibly important. And I want you to listen to those very closely. But over these years, I've realized I was missing one major element. And that'll be the last thing that I add on into today's podcast. So, yeah, in that previous podcast, if you want to listen to it, I was currently a coach, or I was a coach at the time, and I was just trying to help people live a happier and more fulfilling life. I did some live coaching calls, gave people tools, really cool. But now as I get older, I think that actually being content and fulfilled is more important than happiness. I think happiness is more like a singular state. It's not something that can be contained indefinitely. It'll ebb and flow. And I think it's good to have all these other emotions as well. But overall, we want to be content with the life that we have and fulfilled with the things that we're doing. And so I think the things that we need to make this happen is what I used to call the advanced passion effect. I think the advanced passion effect is the key to happiness, the key to contentment, the key to fulfillment, but provided you have this one last bit of information. So let's start off with fulfillment. So fulfillment is, I think, the most important thing, actually, more than anything else. I went to UPW, which for those of you who don't know it, what it is, it's the Tony Robbins 4-day conference. It's now done virtually, so it was cool. I could do it from home, even though you're, starting in the middle of the night. But he says success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure, which is funny because at the time, earlier this year, I was struggling a little bit with my business. I wasn't feeling completely fulfilled. And when we get to the end here, there's a really good way that you can feel fulfilled in what you do. But I think in order to feel fulfilled, you need 3 things first before we get to that 4th. And so the first one that you need is advance. So what is advance? To me, advancing is the same thing as learning, as growing. Ultimately, if we're not moving forward in life, how are you able to feel even a little bit of joy, if you feel like you're going backwards, if you feel like you're stuck, if you feel like you're rolling around in mud, as much as you might, that sounds fun, pigs rolling around in mud, that's not what we want. We want to constantly be moving forward. Again, life is a journey. Life isn't a standstill. When you go on a hike, you're trying to get somewhere. And it's not about getting to where you want to go. It's about enjoying the journey. It's about advancing through the trails. It's about seeing all the beautiful scenery along the way. But in order to advance, we need to learn, we need to grow. It's about trying new things, getting new skills. I think if I look back over, the last 5 years or so, I've constantly been trying to learn new things. It's not even just the last 5 years, it's even further back. Back in 2013 when I did my first trip, I learned how to scuba dive. Really fun, getting to see the world from that completely new perspective. I grabbed that new skill. In the last 5 years, I've learned how to skydive, have my license in that as well. I tried to learn how to fly glider planes. Unfortunately, the club was a little unorganized, so I didn't keep with it. But constantly taking courses, learning how to do new things. I really like watching YouTube because rather than watching TV and stuff like that, I can constantly get new information to my head, which allows me to grow each and every day. It's okay to just relax and watch some TV that's, not necessarily adding information into the brain, but being able to learn. So whether it's reading, taking courses, again, just a little bit of time ago, I did UPW, Unleash the Power Within with Tony Robbins. And again, a lot of that information I've heard before, but there were a couple things in there that really hit home to me, which allowed me to continue that movement forward in life, that gave me an extra skill that actually instantly changed the business that I have right now, because it made me realize I was missing something, which I already knew about. I just didn't realize it towards my business. And from, going through that, I learned more about myself, more about my business, and I've seen a positive change from it. And again, it's not just in, learning new skills. It can be challenging yourself. So for those of you who do know me, I had a history in running. I ran for roughly 10 years from the time I was 13 years old till about 23. Had some really good success. The success is more so at the beginning, and I sort of plateaued out quite early. I was really good at a young age, and, it never really took off from there. But, I got scholarship to the States, ran some pretty amazing times, and I sort of fell out of that. But I'm trying to actually challenge myself right now, and by the end of the year, I'd like to run a 100-kilometer ultra marathon. And it's about advancing myself, trying something new, learning what I can put my body through. And I'm sure that's going to have a lot of personal growth in that whole experience. So the number one thing that I feel we need to learn is how to advance. And then the next thing on that list is passion. Now, passion comes in multiple different forms. So passion can be from relationships, from friendships, from family, as well as doing things that you love. I think if, as human beings, we have no love in our life, life would feel quite empty. Now, it doesn't have to just be from a romantic standpoint. Love can come in many different forms. Obviously, it's great to have a loving relationship, a partner. And, there'll be times where you feel like you have the best relationship in the world. And there'll be other times where it doesn't even exist. I've, had the pleasure of having a 5-year relationship, which was really good. I felt very loved in that relationship. It didn't last in the end, but that's okay. But having that love from somebody else definitely makes your life a lot more fulfilling. Having that person to be able to share life with. But again, it doesn't have to be just relationships. It can be friendships as well. Friendships for me has been something that I have struggled with a little bit throughout my life. I don't know why this is the case, but when I was much younger, I dealt a lot with like bullying. I tend to get along with women a lot more than men or girls and boys when I was in grade school, high school. But it's something that I always worked on. And when I moved to New Zealand, that's where I made a priority of friendships. My first year here, I tried to join a bunch of different activities, bunch of different like board game nights, dance class, Toastmasters, things like that, where I was able to meet a bunch of people. And I can still remember today, the best birthday I think I've ever had was after my first full year here in New Zealand. I had about 15 people out at this party. And to me, that was incredible. To be able to share a birthday with so many people that cared about me, that I cared about them. That there was love, not necessarily in that romantic sense, but in that friendship sense. And that was amazing, just to be able to have that in my life. And then there's family. And obviously, a lot of people make their own families as they grow older with the friends that are in their life. But we also have, the family that we're born with. And for some people, your family life might not be the best, and that's okay. I am quite fortunate that I do have a good family. I do weekly calls back to Canada with my parents, and I play board games online with my siblings quite often. But to be able to know that I can, call these people and hop on a video call, play board games, have these discussions, have that support, it's important. So it doesn't matter which option you choose, whether it's your partner, whether it's friends, whether it's your family. You need to have this in your life. If you're alone, life is going to be depressing. But if you can have somebody to go along this journey with you, if you can have somebody to go down this trail, again, if you're out on a hike, even if it's the most beautiful journey in the world, if you do it alone, and you're always doing it alone, eventually it's not going to make you feel fulfilled. So you got to find somebody. And if you happen to be a person that is feeling alone, just realize there are ways to change this. You can always make new friends, whether you're 20, whether you're 30, whether you're 40 or 50, 60, 70. Obviously, I don't know what it's like to be in those older age ranges, but I know that it is doable. In the next episode that we actually go over, we're going to discuss the book Let Them by Mel Robbins. It's a book I just finished, and I think it has a really powerful message, but specifically when it talks about relationships, friendships. But the truth is, it doesn't matter where you are in your life. You can always make new friends. And these new friends can become your family. So if you don't have family, if you don't have a relationship, friendship is something that you can always gain more of. It does take work. It does take effort. It's not going to happen overnight. You can't just like snap your fingers and before you know it, you have a full roster of friends. But if you put the effort into it, you can have that love in your life from friendships. Yes, relationships take a little bit more work and, it's just one person, but you can have a good group of friends to have that love in your life to surround yourself with if family and relationship isn't there. But one thing you can also do as well to feel that passion is to do things that you're passionate about. Some of my favorite things to do in this world are go scuba diving, go skiing, go hiking. Pretty much every trip I go on now, I try to do at least a couple days of scuba diving. It's just really cool to be, if you haven't tried it, you got to do it. But to be underwater and seeing the world from this different perspective. It's lovely as to see the world as everybody else sees it on the surface. But not everybody goes scuba diving. And unfortunately, we can still only see a small perspective of everything that's underneath the water. But I just find scuba diving is meditative, it's relaxing. And it really lights me up and fuels me every time I do it. So I just got back from a Fiji trip, went with one of my friends. got super, super close to bull sharks, which are the sharks that kill more humans than any shark on the planet. And I was probably within like a couple inches of a shark. But, that really got me going. That was pretty exciting. And then skiing, back when I was living in Vancouver, being able to go out to Whistler, some of the best terrain in the world, that was amazing. At the time, obviously, I had a partner who was big into skiing as well, or snowboarding. And so that was really cool being able to get out there together, sharing it in a relationship, but also sharing that passion for this amazing sport that allows you to enjoy the, extremely chilling season of winter. So skiing is awesome. And then hiking, just getting out in nature, going on big multi-hour, sometimes multi-day hikes. I do a lot of trail running now. And just being able to be out there in nature, powered by your own 2 legs and the fuel that you put in your body, it's amazing. Now, obviously, your passions don't have to be scuba, skiing, hiking, but having some sort of passion, more than just sitting on a couch and doing nothing after work, you need to have something to light you up. And then what makes that even better is if you can have that thing that lights you up and do it either in a relationship, with your friends, with your family. When you can encompass that all together, that is one of the keys to living an extremely fulfilling life. And this brings me on to that third point, which again, I used to talk about a lot back in the days of the Happy Millennial Podcast. And I've pretty much always lived my life with this one. And this is effect. We need to have a positive effect in this world. If you're just going to go through life each and every day, thinking about you, and not what you can do for the greater good for other people, it'll start to eat you up inside. Money is only going to do so much for you. And if that's what your pursuit is, always for the money, it isn't going to make you fulfilled. When I am doing sales and I'm talking to people, one of the things that actually bothers me the most, talking to let's say a doctor, is if you ask them, what's the reason why you did this? And they say, for the money. It's one of the worst things I like hearing when talking to a doctor. When they do it for helping people, that's when you know that person is living a really fulfilling life. Because every single day when they get up and they go to the hospital and they're saving people's lives, they're doing it because that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to be able to help these people. They wanted to be able to give them a second chance at life. So for me, that's what I want to do too. I want to help people. That's part of the reason why I started this podcast. That's part of the reason why I want to be on stage, is because the more information, the more stories I can get out to people, the more tools that I can empower people with, which will help them live a better life, it means that I'm making a positive impact on each and every one of them. And that's why if you're listening to this podcast, even if you walk away with just one thing that makes a positive impact in your life, I'm making a positive effect in this world. When I started my motivational speaking, Mr. PMA, that was the goal. I talked about that biggest conference I spoke at. It was a 90-minute presentation. And I talked about a slew of different things, many tools. I didn't expect those students, those youth, to pick up everything. That was never the goal. But if they can just pick up one thing and it has a positive impact in their life, then I'm implementing this pillar to my life of having a positive effect in this world. When I was life coaching, yes, I didn't coach a lot of people. I moved into business coaching too quick, and there I didn't have much success at all. But when I was life coaching, again, if somebody having a conversation with me and I ask a question which allows them to look at life just slightly different, that is going to ultimately have a positive effect in their life. Forgot to write this down here. And then currently right now, I have a marketing company, but mostly we work with charities and we raise, millions of dollars every year for charities, which make a positive impact all around the world. Was this my dream? Did I have this desire to work in the charity space? No, it wasn't what I planned to do. I liked fundraising as a child. Grade school, I did, readathons. In high school, I ran the Canadian Cancer Walkathon for my school and raised tons of money. I think 2 years in a row, $5,000 each on my own. The school itself, $75,000 2 years in a row, so about $150,000. All these different things, though, they make a positive effect in this world. So if you don't know what it is that you can do to make a positive effect in the world, you do need to take the time, and there's definitely ways in which you can do that, but you need to find your why, your mission. And maybe one of these future episodes will go over like a Simon Sinek, Find Your Why. When I was living in Vancouver, I actually did a workshop for Find Your Why. So I could possibly pull back up that workbook and we can go over that, or maybe I'll reread the book and give us some tools to do that. But you need to find your why. You need to find your reason. And you need to find out how you can make a positive impact in this world. And it doesn't really matter what you do. The odds are you actually are making a positive impact. I like this one story about, I can't remember the person's name, but during the NASA program, which sent man to the moon, the president at the time, he went to go tour NASA. And he went up to this one person. They were a janitor. They weren't an engineer. They weren't a rocket scientist. They were a janitor. And when the president went up to me, he's like, "What do you do here?" His answer was, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." How could that janitor be unfulfilled if what his feeling was is that he's helping put a man on the moon? And the truth of the matter, he was. It's hard to do work in a dirty environment, and he was making sure that all these engineers and rocket scientists had a clean work environment where they could think clearly and, again, help put a man on the moon. It's what he believed in. He believed he was putting a man on the moon, and he was, because he was part of that team. He was having a positive effect in those NASA headquarters to give people the environment that they needed to get man on the moon. So if you don't know your why, you need to take some time. You need to figure it out. I actually did create this journal back when I was life coaching. At some point, I plan to release it. It'll be for free when I do so. And it is another way of helping people find their why. So I'll let you guys know in a future episode when I do release that. Again, it will be free. I'm not going to try to make any money off it or anything like that. I'll just have a link where you can download it. But you need to find your why. So those are the 3 things that I use to speak about for finding fulfillment, for finding happiness, for finding contentment, is you need to constantly trying to advance, trying to grow, move in that forward direction. You need to have passion. You need to have love in your life, whether it's through relationships, friendships, family. You need to be doing things that you love. And you need to be doing something that has a positive impact on this world, has a positive effect in this world. Whether it is your work or it's something you do on the side. Maybe you don't love your work, but maybe it gives you the income to be able to do something on the side that can have a positive effect on this world. Then what you're doing, if you can do all 3 of those things, you're likely going to have a fulfilling life. But there is one thing that's missing. Now, what is it? The one thing that I think is important for each and every one of these things is to be present. If you're not present, it's really hard to be fulfilled in any of the stuff that you might be doing. Being present is probably the thing that has held me back the most in actually feeling fulfilled in the things that I've done so far. So you can either be one of three things. You can either be living in the past, running away from problems. You can be living in the future, chasing dreams and goals, which will possibly make your life better. But I find the area that a lot of people do is just fail to live in the present. And living in the present is the key to being content. So myself, I've definitely lived a lot in the past, and I've lived a lot in the future. If I look back to my first relationship, I would say one of the main reasons it failed was because I wasn't in the present. When I was in that first relationship, I constantly was thinking about the things that happened previous to that relationship, the people I'd gone on dates with, nobody that I had a relationship with, because that was my first real relationship. But comparing to, those little feelings and stuff that I got along the way. And those feelings and stuff are not even realistic. No relationship is like the first few dates forever. It ebbs and flows. But if it wasn't comparing to what I had in the past with all these random dates and stuff that I went on, I was thinking about the future. And would this relationship allow me to have all the things I wanted before we were even there? And who knows how my life was even going to turn out. But thinking that this relationship can't help me get there is a failure to that relationship. And it's me self-sabotaging that relationship that I had. Because honestly, it was a great relationship. It was very loving, very caring. We had such similar hobbies and passions. We got along extremely well. I would have said she was my best friend. But where I extremely failed that relationship is that I was never present. I didn't appreciate what I had and how great things actually were. I just constantly was thinking about how this wasn't going to help me live my dreams, how it wasn't as great as those little dates here and there in the past, comparing to relationships I didn't even have. If I would have just taken the time to appreciate and be grateful for what that relationship was giving me, I may have been able to keep working through it. But when you can't see how great what you have is, why would you want to stick around? Again, that was my problem. It wasn't my partner's problem. It was me dealing with myself. So many people blame it on external situations, but it was me not being present, which was causing the issues. And it's not just that. It's not just relationships. It's also, goals I have in life. I always had this dream of, being a public speaker, traveling around the world, helping people, speaking on stages. It's still what I want to do. But constantly just thinking about these goals and where I want to be and, not enjoying the journey along the way. And when I'm not there, which I'm not going to be there still for some time, makes you sort of feel like, is it all worth it? And then when I think about the past and having those failed businesses, I've had 6 businesses. The first one did well, and then all the rest failed quite miserably up until recently. Now I have a marketing company, that does fairly well. But previous to that, it was all failures. And if I keep running away from these failures, these stresses, being tens of thousands of dollars in debt, it's going to limit me from what I can do. But when I think about the present, how great things actually are, right now I do have a successful business. And so maybe it's easier saying it now with a success than if I were to go back to when, let's say, I had Mr. PMA and things were failing, things were struggling. But even in that moment, there's still positive things. I was learning each and every day. Losing money is not the end of the world. Tons of people go to university and end up in hundreds of thousands of debt. But they learn along the way. If you treat business the same way, and it's not necessarily about what you're gaining or losing or the money that you're making, but the journey that you're going on and the information that you're gathering that's going to set you up for a better future and for potentially hitting the life that you dream of, then that's amazing. But again, you got to be in the present. You got to enjoy each and every day. So for me now, I've always dreamed of having a business that's successful. I sort of have that now. It's one of the reasons why I'm restarting this podcast, or restarting a podcast in general, is because thankfully I have a business that has given me the financial security to know that I can start another project and I don't have to make money from it anytime soon. Yeah, it'd be great if eventually I can turn this into a profitable business as well, and I can step away from the other business and have this my primary focus. But, being appreciative of what I have, don't worry about if I ever get to that globe-trotting lifestyle, and not worry about my failures from the past, but just trying to enjoy what I have now. That's sort of the key. And how do you do that? Well, you do it through gratitude. You do it through appreciation of what you have. So much of our lives, we think about the things that we don't have. But think of the things that you do. If you're listening to this podcast and you're in a Western country, it doesn't matter if you are a minimum wage earner or if you are a multimillionaire. You have so much to be grateful. You probably have a job. And if you don't have a job, you have a government that is paying you to sit at home and look for a job. That's pretty awesome. You get paid to look for a job. You have food. Yeah, you might not have the most exquisite food in the world. You might not be able to go to a Michelin star restaurant, but you have food. You have sustenance to fuel your body. You have shelter. If you're listening to this podcast, my guess is you have a roof over your head. And you have friends, and you have family, and you have relationships. These are all things to be grateful for. But these are the big things. There's small things to be grateful for too. Have you ever just taken a moment and been grateful for being outside and having that beautiful weather not pouring down on you? Grateful for when somebody just sends you a little message when you're having a tough day. Or if maybe somebody passes away and they're there thinking about you. Grateful for, when your gas says you're almost out of gas and you happen to make it to the gas station on time without running out of fuel. I almost did that the other day. I was out on a hike. I got into the car and it said it was exactly the amount of kilometers to the gas station before I ran out of fuel. Thankfully, with my choice of driving, I made it there with a couple extra kilometers to spare. Thankful that I didn't have to call, for roadside assistance. But we all have so many things in our lives that we can be grateful for. Again, life's not going to be perfect. But even in our non-perfect world, our non-perfect lives, there are so many things we can be grateful for. We can have appreciation for. And when you start to focus on the things that you can be grateful for and appreciative of, life starts to become a whole lot more fulfilling. So I spoke of this not too long back about UPW. I went to it about 2 months ago. And again, I've heard most of the things that he's talked about before. But I think the most powerful exercise that I was able to get from this, and I'll put this in the link for the podcast, is actually his exercise priming. To me, I would say priming is a form of meditation. It's about 10 to 15 minutes. His video is 15, even though he says it's 10. And you start off with breathing exercise. And the next thing is what I actually think is the most powerful. And what it is, it's thinking of 3 things, 1 minute after another. 3 things that you can be grateful for. They can be simple. They can be, not so simple. But 3 things that you can be grateful for, but not just thinking about them, but actually trying to feel them. When you actually try to feel the emotions of gratitude and all the other feelings that those things give you, it's really hard to not be in a happy, content state of mind. When you actually take a moment to, so one thing I like to think about when I'm thinking of gratitude is in the previous day when I'm doing my sales, all the lovely people I talk to. If I think about the lovely people I talk to and not the people who are assholes, how can I not be happy? How can I not feel fulfilled with the work that I've done? Because I've had all these beautiful conversations. When I think of that business, again, it's not my favorite business in the world, but it gives me the life that I have. Having some financial security, being able to have a nice home, being able to put all that food on the table. But when I take that moment to actually feel the emotion, it just makes you feel so much more fulfilled for the life that you have. Then after that, it goes through, scanning the body head to toe, which is a very common meditation practice, and then focusing on goals. But I think it is the gratitude part of this exercise priming that actually makes such a positive impact. It's because you're trying to feel it. You're actually trying to put yourself in that state of mind of gratitude and appreciation. And I've done like the 5-minute journal before where, you write out 3 or 5 things that you're appreciative of each and every day. And it's good, but it takes a moment to write it. But when you can feel it for a minute, when you can feel that gratitude, when you could feel that appreciation, it just has such a powerful impact on your life. So if you take anything away from this podcast today, what I would suggest is have some appreciation and gratitude and live in the present. When you live in the present, filled with all the appreciation and gratitude of what you have, it's really hard, if you're being honest with yourself, to not feel fulfilled. Even if life is really rough right now, if you focus on the things that you do have, the things that are actually still positive in your life, those are going to be the things that really light you up inside. So again, the things that you need for fulfillment in your life, you need to advance. You need to constantly try to learn, grow, and move forward. You also need to have passion. You need to surround yourself with loved ones and do things that you love. So whether it's your relationship, your family, your friends, whether it's, playing an instrument, going to dance lessons, going for a hike, whatever it is that lights you up. And if you can use those passions and share them with the loved ones in your life, it has even a bigger impact. And then finding your why, having that positive effect in this world. Find that why and make it your mission each and every day. Make that the reason why you get up out of bed. But again, being present, having gratitude for what you have. If you can live life each and every day having these 4 things, the advanced passion effect, while maintaining that presence, you are going to live one extremely fulfilling life. So, before we head off, I really hope that you gain some sort of value from today's episode. I know this is just the first episode, and there's going to be many more to come. I'm committing to this podcast for at least 3 years. Regular episodes, either fortnightly or weekly, for at least 3 years. And my whole goal, my whole promise is that if you keep tuning in, I will do everything in my power to ensure prioritizing bringing value to my listeners over everything else. First off, I'm confident if I do that, this podcast will find its legs to, run on. And so that's what I want to do. I want to prioritize having a positive impact for you all. And so that way I can help everyone listening live a more fulfilling life. And again, if I can do that, this itself for me will become one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done. So again, I want to thank you for listening to this first podcast. I really appreciate you being here. It's been an honor getting to finally speak on camera, all three of them in this studio. I'm very grateful that I have the ability to set up a studio like this so I can deliver this podcast to you all. And I really hope you all enjoyed. But in the meantime, I'd appreciate it if you all like, if you all share, if you all subscribe. And I look forward to sharing more with you all very soon.